When you put money into buying things for the garden, you want to do as much as you can to ensure that you're going to get a good harvest from those things. So today I'm going to share with you some tips about how to properly plant seedlings that you buy from the store in order to get the greatest yield from them. The first principle stems from the basic idea that plants need soil, nutrients, water, and sunshine in order to grow. And so when you have plants spaced too close together for their needs, then you're going to get stunted growth. So in this seedling tray, you can see that we've got some nice big Brussels sprouts plants growing here. But then in the corner, you can see these two. What we have here are two that are growing in the same cell. And these two are both smaller than the single plant below them because these two are competing for nutrients. So when you get plants from the store, you need to make sure that you're only planting one plant. You might think, oh, I'll plant these two and then I'll get two, but it's not going to work like that. They're going to compete and you're going to get less than you would otherwise. Now that doesn't mean you have to throw it away. You have two options here. Is you could just take a pair of scissors or clippers and you go through and clip out the second plant or the third plant in each of these cells so that you only have one left over. Now this clipping out is a good idea for plants that are going to have more sensitive roots, because when you try and separate them, then there's going to be some root disturbance, and some plants really don't like root disturbance. Also, if you know you don't have room for more than 6 plants, then that's another time when you might want to just go through and clip them out. But the other thing you can do, and it's what I plan on doing with these lettuces, these are romaine lettuces, and I looked through and specifically found one that had two, but that had two that were very, two plants that were very far apart from each other. So I know that I can easily go in and split this apart. Street sweepers here. What I'm going to do is go gently down the middle, and some of the roots are going to break, and that's okay. But I'm just going to go gently down the middle and pull apart and tease apart. And now I have 2 romaine plants, and these I will separate. I'll put at least 8 inches between them, and both of these can grow up to be full heads of romaine. Whereas if I left them together like this, they would both struggle to even make a full head of romaine. I'm going to do the same thing with this pot of Swiss chard. When you buy seedlings from the store, they're being shipped from having been grown in greenhouses. It's a good idea to not just go plant them right away in your garden, or they might suffer from a little bit of shock. When you grow seedlings on your own, you need to go through the process of hardening them off. And it's good practice to harden off your seedlings that you buy from the store as well, simply because the growing conditions are going to be generally going to be different from where you're planting them. I am not too fussy about the hardening off process. I don't usually make it more than 2 or 3 days. And generally what I do is leave it in a semi-protected spot for a couple hours, and then bring it back inside, and then, a couple hours, maybe a couple more hours the next day, and then over half the day, 3/4 of the day the next day, and then go plant them out. This way you make sure that you don't lose any of your plants to shock. One way to make sure that you get the most out of the seedlings that you buy from the store is to not be fooled by equating what they're selling in the stores right now with what you can actually plant outside right now. You need to make sure that you're only planting what's appropriate for your season. When I went to the store this week, they were selling tomatoes, peppers, basil. None of those things will do well in the weather that we're having right now. This morning we had snow on the ground, and we still have lots of sub-freezing nights coming up. And so don't be tempted to buy any of those things. Those will not last. What I picked up this week for early spring planting, Swiss chard, lettuce, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and some pansies. All of these can take very cold night temperatures. You don't want to plant anything like tomatoes or basil or peppers outside until you're done with having your freezing weather. Even my lettuces, I might cover up at night if I'm going to have a really cold night. Lettuce is not quite as cold tolerant as like the cabbages. There are some techniques for trying to grow things a little bit outside of their season. However, if you're a beginner or new to gardening, you're gonna have the greatest success if you just plant the plants and try and grow the plants when they want to grow. You always want to make sure the roots of the plant are not dry before transplanting. They don't have to be soaking wet, but if they're dry, they'll have more shock. To get seedlings out of their cells, what you do is put your hand over with your fingers spread out over the plant to either side of the plant, and then you tip it upside down, and you're going to press on the bottom of the cell to kind of release it. And then these ones, they have a little bit of space between here where the roots have kind of grown through, so I'm kind of going to have to pull that apart a little bit to get the seedling out. And then in order to encourage the roots to grow out and find a new home, you can kind of break apart these roots just a little bit at the bottom, and it'll send them off in new directions to secure the plant. Now when I place the plant in the ground, I'm going to put it so that the level of the soil of the little seedling is level with the soil of my garden, and then fill in around it and pack it down. And then I even pile the soil of your garden a little bit, just a thin layer over the top of the soil of the plant. Because this growing medium that they grow in is very loose and airy, and what can happen when the wind blows across, it can actually dry out the roots of your seedling. Adding a thin layer of mulch over the soil of your garden will help to prevent evaporation. It'll help retain water and retain the friability or the looseness of the soil, and that will really benefit your plants. And after you transplant, we've disturbed the roots, and so it's good to water in the seedlings in their new home to help them get settled. I was a little late starting my spring seedlings this year, and after they got going, I set them outside for some sunshine one day, and there was a miscommunication, and the chickens got let out to free range in the yard for a while, and they promptly enjoyed a delicious meal of microgreens. So at this point in the season, I'm not going to worry about trying to restart seedlings inside. I'm just too far behind already. I went out to the hardware store nearby to see if they had any cold weather crops in yet, and they have just barely gotten them in. And so I went ahead and just purchased seedlings for my garden this year. Starting seeds is a lot of fun and makes you feel really self-reliant, and at the same time, it is an additional, separate, complicated set of skills to learn on top of gardening. So if you just want to start out gardening by buying things at the store, it's a great way to start. If you want to see more of our family's experiences with homesteading and learn more tips and tricks, please subscribe so you can follow along. Oh, come on!